This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, an online therapy platform. I love Oscar season, but for creatives, it can serve as a stark reminder of how much great artistic work never sees the light of day. Content creation has become a dream job for many people, and like any career path, it can do a number on your mental health. My own experience as a YouTuber practically began in tandem with my beginning therapy. It's a great example of how finding an outlet for sharing how you feel can help break harmful habits and free up new creative bandwidth. The most difficult step is the first one, finding someone to talk to. That's why I'm excited to partner with BetterHelp and support their mission to make therapy more affordable and accessible. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice unique to your situation. After filling out a short questionnaire, you'll be matched with a therapist, and using code Babish or clicking the link in my description, betterhelp.com/Babish gets you 10% off your first month.
I'll order the Cherry Jubilee. We can share it.
I can't allow that either.
Can we say it's his birthday?
It's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, young man. Well, let's get you a slice of cake or some other age-appropriate dessert.
Christ on a crutch. What kind of a fascist hash foundry are you running here?
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at the foods of the... Oh, hey, look, somebody left me an apple. Oh, okay, well, never mind, I guess. Let's take a look at some of the foods from this year's Oscar contenders. First up, Cherry's Jubilee, not from Frasier, but from The Holdovers. Starting by pitting a pound of cherries, pausing briefly after somebody kicked the surge protector, and resuming once power was restored. Then over on the stovetop in a wide saute pan, I'm combining 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter with 3 tablespoons of dark brown sugar, the juice of 1 whole orange.
Oh, it's the juice of half an orange.
Sorry, half an orange.
But there's more sauce.
Okay, never mind. Juice of a whole orange. After all, there's no such thing as too much sauce. Bring that up to a gentle simmer and cook it for about 2-3 minutes. Just enough time for the sugar to dissolve and for a rudimentary caramel to form. Dump in the cherries and cook anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes until the cherries begin to soften and the caramel turns a delightfully cherry red. Then we must partake in the forbidden act of flambe. Bring the cherries to a spirited simmer, turn off the flame, and add 2 tablespoons of cognac, cautiously setting it ablaze with a stick lighter. Now, alcohol can burn almost invisibly, so if you're not sure if it's lit, give it a shake, and you should see some visually impressive but culinarily unnecessary flames. Cook for about a minute until the alcohol stops being on fire, then spoon the warm sauce over some vanilla ice cream, and garnish with a fresh cherry just so there's no confusion. Now, this is a pretty quick, easy, and elegant dessert, not to mention a great use for frozen cherries. But to make it movie accurate, we have to assemble in a takeout container and opt for Jim Beam bourbon whiskey as our source of fire. So I'm just going to sprinkle some of that over top, try to set it on fire, and I didn't think this was going to catch because it wasn't heated up, but it did manage to sputter out a few flames. A far cry from a fire hazard, I opted instead to heat up some Jim Beam in a small saucepan, setting that ablaze and pouring it over top, asking whoever kicked the surge protector to kick it again. There we go, that's something you definitely don't want to do on the back of a car in a restaurant parking lot. But unlike 1970s takeout containers, our modern ones seem to be stubbornly anti-fire. Eventually I got a little flame going on a tab, and I sat back to watch it all burn, which it did entirely, save for the ice cream. Pretty cool, almost like one of those chocolate sphere desserts that melts away to reveal its secrets. But obviously for so many reasons, I don't recommend doing this at home. Next up from Poor Things, we're making a shortcut version of pastéis de nata, starting by making a sugar syrup of 150 grams granulated sugar combined with 75 grams of water, 1 cinnamon stick, and the peels of half a lemon. Bring that up to a simmer and cook just until all the sugar is dissolved. Kill the heat, allow it to cool. Next up in a saucier, we're bringing 240 grams of milk up to a simmer. Meanwhile, whisking together 120 grams of milk with 40 grams of all-purpose flour, streaming that into the simmering milk, whisking constantly and cooking for 2 to 4 minutes until it has the consistency of pancake batter. Kill the heat, whisk in the sugar syrup, and then slowly stream in 6 large egg yolks, whisking constantly so that it tempers into the mixture. That's our custard, which we can strain and set aside to cool. Now, pastéis de nata pastry is pretty difficult to make, so for a shortcut version, we're rolling out some store-bought frozen puff pastry and beginning to pinch and roll it into a tight log. Work slowly and pinch profoundly to make sure that there is no space between the layers. Seal it shut with a little brush of water along the seam, and refrigerate for about 1 hour, after which time the log should be nice and stiff. Slice off the unruly ends, and then we're going to evenly divide this into 12 pieces, each of which we're going to place on a lightly floured surface, cut side up, and then we're going to roll it out to a round anywhere from 3 to 5 inches wide, depending on the size of your muffin tin. We want just enough pastry so that we can press it down into the muffin cavity, almost smearing the edges up above the lip of the muffin tin. Refrigerate that for another 30 minutes, Then I'm going to lightly dock the side and bottoms of each pastry cup so that it doesn't shrink too much, and fill each about 3/4 of the way full with our custard, placing them on a baking sheet that's been preheating in a 475-degree Fahrenheit oven, baking for 11 to 13 minutes until the pastry's brown and the custard is dappled. Let them rest for about 5 minutes before scooping them out and letting them cool on a wire rack. As you can see, our rolling and smearing method produced kind of a telltale swirl in the bottom of the pastry. These should ideally be eaten while still warm, and even more ideally sprinkled with powdered sugar and a little bit of cinnamon. You should end up with a soft, gooey custard and a light, crisp pastry. Last up, the heart-shaped waffle breakfast from Barbie. We're making our standard waffle batter, combining 4½ ounces of all-purpose flour with 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, and separately combining 7 ounces of room temperature whole milk, 1 3/4 ounces of unsalted butter melted and cooled, and 1 large egg. Add the wets to the dries and gently whisk until combined but still lumpy. Procure a novelty heart-shaped waffle maker, lubricate it with vegetable oil in a spray bottle per the manufacturer's oddly specific instructions, and scoop in 2 tablespoons of waffle batter, allowing to cook for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes until golden brown and crisp. Fetch it out with a fork, and in the film, it's served syrupless with nothing but a dollop of whipped cream. So we're combining some amount of sugar with some amount of heavy cream, I don't know, and whipping it into the self-titled dessert condiment, piping a playful pile into the corner of our waffle-shaped heart. Then, per Barbie Land rules, we have to pretend to dig in. Here we go. Cut, cut, cut. Eat, eat, eat. Chew, chew, chew. I was never good at make-believe, so I'm just gonna eat this. And it's a waffle with whipped cream on it. I think Barbie deserves better, particularly Greta Gerwig, who should have been nominated for Best Director. So let's endeavor to make our own heart-shaped plastic waffle. I'm starting by assembling a rubber mold-making mold. You see, it's a mold for making molds. I'm then taping a piece of acetate to a rimmed baking sheet, making sure it's nice and flat, and then I'm gonna hot glue the bottom of the mold to the acetate, making a waterproof seal on the bottom. Then I've got an extra well-done waffle that I've allowed to cool and dry for a couple hours, which I'm going to place in the plastic and then cover with a concoction, combining the contents of a silicone mold making kit, available wherever silicone mold making kits are sold, and then pouring it over top of the waffle in the hopes of making a good first impression. You get it? Because molds are like it seems as though waffles float in silicone, so that argument is finally settled. So I'm going to do it again, this time both filling in the holes on the bottom of the waffle with hot glue and hot gluing the waffle itself to the bottom of the acetate, pressing it down evenly to make sure that there are no gaps into which silicone can leak. Pour the silicone mixture over top, tap out any bubbles, and let it cure for at least 8 hours before peeling off the mold and ripping out the absolutely ruined waffle, revealing its perfect detailed impression. Now I've got an epoxy mold mixture here that I'm going to combine and color with both gold and brown epoxy coloring compounds, mixing thoroughly to make sure that both chemicals are combined and the color is evenly distributed. At this point I started feeling a little faint, so I read the directions and found that I was supposed to be both wearing a mask and gloves, so wear a mask and gloves, and carefully pour the epoxy into the mold. I'm pouring it across a popsicle stick to prevent bubbles, giving it a few spirited taps, and then letting it cure for 24 hours, after which time you should find yourself with a homemade toy ready to emerge from its cocoon. Carefully pop it out of the silicone mold, and there you have it, a homemade plastic waffle from Barbie. Only thing left now is toy whipped cream. I found this whipped cream clay, as it is so called, which you can pipe out into decorative patterns and allow to cure for 3 days. I don't know exactly who this is for, but I'm very glad that it exists, because after the 96-hour process, I was finally able to plate up my toy waffle. Oh, don't forget to off-center the whipped cream, and there you have it. Congrats to all the winners and nominees, and this bite goes out to a great year at the movies. Sometimes, even if they're hollow in plastic, they can still have a beating heart. It doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode, and use code Babish or click the link in my video description to get 10% off your first month.